In my family, I was hated for my beauty. The mirror they resented. From the time Michelle could remember, mirrors caused trouble in her house. Not because she admired herself too much, but because other people noticed. She was 16 when her aunt first said it out loud. "Why does she always have to look like that?" Aunt Denise muttered one evening, her voice sharp with irritation. "Even when she's doing nothing." Michelle had been standing quietly in the kitchen, helping her mother wash dishes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry. Just clear brown skin, long lashes, and a calm confidence she didn't even know she carried. Her mother, Cynthia, didn't defend her. Instead, she sighed. "Michelle, go to your room." That was how it always started. Not with praise, not with pride, but with discomfort. Growing up in a tight black family on the south side of Chicago, Michelle learned early that beauty could be a burden, especially when it made others feel small. Her cousins whispered when she walked into family gatherings. Her older sister, Tasha, rolled her eyes whenever anyone complimented Michelle. Even her own mother grew distant, as if Michelle's face reminded her of something she had lost. "You think you're better than us?" Tasha once snapped after a neighbor casually said Michelle should model. Michelle blinked, confused. "I didn't say anything." "But you don't have to," Tasha replied bitterly. "Your face does all the talking." That night, Michelle cried quietly into her pillow, not because she wanted attention, but because she didn't understand why something she never asked for felt like a crime. At school, teachers praised her confidence. Strangers smiled at her. Opportunities seemed to find her. But at home, she learned to shrink. She wore oversized clothes. She stopped tying her hair neatly. She avoided mirrors altogether. Still, the resentment didn't fade. Because the problem was never what Michelle did. It was who she was. And deep down, they all knew it. By 22, Michelle understood something painful. Her family didn't hate her because she was arrogant. They hated her because the world saw her, and they felt invisible beside her. Her sister Tasha had once been the pretty one. Her mother had once been admired. Her cousins had once felt chosen. Michelle's existence reopened old wounds. When Michelle was accepted into a prestigious marketing firm downtown, the reaction at home wasn't celebration. It was silence. Then judgment. "Pretty girls don't last in corporate spaces," her uncle scoffed. "They only get hired for their looks." Michelle swallowed the insult. When she bought her first car, her mother asked, "Who helped you pay for that?" When she dressed well for work, Tasha snapped, "You don't need to try so hard. Men will stare anyway." No matter what Michelle achieved, her beauty was used to erase her effort. She was never hard-working, never intelligent, never deserving, just lucky. The final crack came during a family dinner in 2025. Michelle had just landed a promotion. She smiled nervously as she shared the news. Her mother looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, but cruelly, "Beauty fades. Don't let it make you forget where you came from." Michelle stood up slowly. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "I never forgot," she said. "But you all forgot me." The room fell silent. For the first time, Michelle realized something powerful. They weren't rejecting her. They were afraid of her becoming free. And that night, Michelle made a decision that would change everything. She would stop apologizing for the face she was born with. And she would stop begging people who resented her light to love her darkness. Michelle didn't leave her family in anger. That surprised even her. There was no shouting. No slammed doors. No dramatic speech in the living room. Just a quiet Sunday morning in early 2025, when she packed 2 suitcases and stood in front of the mirror she had avoided for years. She looked at herself fully for the first time in a long while. Not with pride. Not with shame. With clarity. "I didn't choose this face," she whispered. "But I choose my peace." Downstairs, the house moved as usual. The television murmured. Dishes clinked. Tasha laughed at something on her phone. No one noticed Michelle carrying her bags to the door. Until her mother spoke. "Where are you going dressed like that?" Michelle paused. "I'm moving out." Cynthia frowned. "To where?" "To a place where I don't have to make myself smaller to belong." Her mother scoffed. "You think life is easier out there because you're pretty?" Michelle turned around slowly. "No," she said calmly. "Life is harder here because I'm human." For a moment, something like regret flickered in Cynthia's eyes. But it passed. Michelle left anyway. She moved into a modest apartment closer to her job. Small balcony, neutral walls, quiet neighbors. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like rejection. It felt like relief. That first night alone, she sat on the floor and cried. Not because she missed them, but because she finally stopped fighting to be seen. Independence didn't turn Michelle into someone cold. It made her honest. At work, she stopped downplaying herself. She spoke up in meetings. She led projects. She earned respect, not because of her face, but because of her focus. Her manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Renee, pulled her aside one afternoon. "You know people underestimate you," Renee said. Michelle smiled knowingly. "I'm used to that." "Good," Renee replied. "Because you're about to lead the biggest campaign we've ever launched." Success followed, not loudly, but steadily. Michelle started mentoring young black girls who struggled with confidence. She volunteered on weekends, teaching them something she had learned the hard way. Beauty doesn't need permission to exist. Meanwhile, her family watched from a distance. Social media posts whispered what phone calls wouldn't say. "She thinks she's too good now." City life changed her. Beauty got to her head. Michelle didn't respond. For the first time, she understood something crucial. People who benefit from your silence will always resent your growth. Trouble didn't announce itself when it came. Tasha lost her job first. Their uncle's business failed. Medical bills piled up for their mother. The family group chat, silent for months, suddenly came alive. Michelle's phone buzzed late one evening. "Mom, can you come by tomorrow? We need to talk." Michelle stared at the message for a long time. She didn't feel excited. She didn't feel bitter. She felt prepared. The next day, she walked back into the house she once shrank inside of. Nothing had changed, except her. Her mother looked older. Her sister looked tired. The resentment was still there, but thinner now. Cynthia cleared her throat. "We need help." Michelle nodded. "I know." Tasha avoided her eyes. "You always land on your feet," she muttered. Michelle met her gaze gently. "I had to learn how, alone." For the first time, no one accused her of being lucky. Because luck doesn't look like endurance. Michelle helped, but with limits. She paid some bills. She connected her sister to job leads. She supported her mother's care. But she didn't move back in. And she didn't accept the old narrative. One evening, her mother finally said what had been buried for years. "You remind me of who I used to be," Cynthia admitted softly. "And who I never became." Michelle took a breath. "I was never your competition," she said. "I was your daughter." Cynthia nodded slowly, tears forming. Healing didn't arrive all at once. But respect did. And for Michelle, that was enough. Love found Michelle when she wasn't looking for it. Not the loud, flashy kind that made her feel like a prize, but the quiet kind that made her feel safe. His name was Aaron. They met at a community branding workshop Michelle volunteered to host. He noticed her confidence before he noticed her beauty, and when he finally did, it didn't intimidate him. "You don't dim yourself," he said one evening as they walked to their cars. "That's rare." Michelle paused. "I used to." Aaron shook his head. "I'm glad you don't anymore." Their relationship felt unfamiliar. In a good way. No competition. No insecurity. No subtle resentment when strangers looked at her. When someone complimented Michelle, Aaron smiled like it was a shared win. At a family cookout months later, Tasha watched them from across the yard. "He doesn't look threatened," she said quietly. Michelle replied gently, "Love shouldn't feel like survival." It was the first time Tasha didn't argue. In 2025, Michelle launched a non-profit initiative called Mirror Work, a mentorship program for young black girls navigating confidence, identity, and visibility. The program grew faster than she expected. Girls who had been told they were too much. Girls accused of thinking they were better. Girls taught to apologize for being seen. Michelle told them the truth. "People don't always hate you," she said during a workshop. "Sometimes they hate how your light exposes their wounds." Her words spread online. Interviews followed. Panels. Invitations. Her family watched her success unfold, not as gossip this time, but as fact. One evening, her mother attended a Mirror Work event quietly, sitting in the back row. She listened. She cried. And afterward, she hugged Michelle tightly. "I wish someone had told me this," Cynthia whispered. Michelle hugged her back, not to heal the past, but to honor the present. Years later, Michelle stood in a softly lit nursery, holding her newborn daughter. Aaron stood beside her, eyes full. "She looks like you," he said. Michelle smiled. "I hope she feels safe being herself." They named her Ariel, meaning Lion of God. From the beginning, Michelle made promises she intended to keep. Her daughter would never be punished for being admired, never shamed for being confident, never made to feel guilty for her reflection. When Ariel was older and asked, "Mommy, why do people stare?" Michelle knelt beside her and said calmly, "Because beauty draws attention. But character earns respect. And you will have both." Ariel nodded, satisfied. That was enough. Michelle returned to her childhood home one last time, not to move back, but to close a chapter. She stood in her old bedroom, sunlight hitting the mirror she once feared. She looked at her reflection and smiled. Not because she was beautiful, but because she was whole. Her family no longer resented her the way they once did. Some wounds healed. Some simply scarred over. But Michelle understood now. She was never hated for her beauty. She was resented for surviving without permission. And she no longer carried that weight. She walked out of the house peacefully, her light intact, her boundaries firm, her story finally her own. Fame was not something Michelle chased. But purpose has a way of carrying your name further than intention ever could. By late 2025, Mirror Work had grown beyond Chicago. Chapters opened in Atlanta, Oakland, Baltimore, and Detroit. Michelle found herself on stages she once believed were reserved for other people. At a national conference for black women leaders, the moderator introduced her like this. She turned what people resented into what people needed. The applause was long, loud, unavoidable. Michelle stood there, steady. She thought of the girl who wore oversized clothes so her own family wouldn't feel threatened. The girl who learned early that beauty could make people cruel. The girl who believed silence was the price of belonging. She spoke calmly. "I was taught that my beauty made people uncomfortable," Michelle said. "But what truly made them uncomfortable was that I refused to disappear." The room rose to its feet. Somewhere in the audience, her sister Tasha watched with tears in her eyes. For the first time, she didn't feel envy. She felt regret. Tasha showed up at Michelle's office unannounced one afternoon. She looked nervous, smaller somehow. "I don't want money," Tasha said quickly. "Or connections." Michelle gestured for her to sit. "I just want to say it," Tasha continued, voice cracking. "I hated you because when people praised you, I felt erased. That wasn't your fault. It was my wound." Michelle listened without interrupting. "I competed with you when I should have protected you," Tasha said. "I'm sorry." Silence filled the room. Then Michelle stood and hugged her. "I waited years for you to say that," Michelle whispered. "Not to punish you, but so we could stop pretending." They didn't become best friends overnight. But they became honest. and honesty was the real beginning. Ariel was 7 when she came home from school one day, quiet. "Mom," she asked later, "why did a girl say I think I'm better than everyone?" Michelle set aside her phone. "Did you say you were better?" she asked gently. Ariel shook her head. "I just answered the question in class." Michelle smiled softly. "Listen to me," she said. "Some people confuse confidence with arrogance, especially when it comes from girls who look like us." Ariel nodded slowly. "So I shouldn't stop?" "No," Michelle said firmly. "You should never shrink so others feel tall." Ariel hugged her tightly. And in that moment, Michelle knew. The cycle had ended. Years later, Michelle wrote a short line in her journal, a line she would later frame in her office. "I was not hated because I was beautiful. I was hated because I survived jealousy, silence, and comparison, and still chose joy." Her family was no longer her battlefield. Her beauty was no longer her burden. Her story was no longer misunderstood. And if anyone ever asked Michelle how she did it, how she survived being resented for simply existing, she would smile and say, "I stopped asking people who feared my light to validate it." For more unforgettable stories that touch the heart, subscribe to Mira Wealth Stories. Like, comment, share, and turn on your notification bell, so you're always part of the journey.